February, as I mentioned, is Black History Month. It is also part of the season for nonviolence. So there's a lot going on and worthy of celebration this month. Wednesday night Wisdom series will be focusing on Black history, and on Sundays we'll be talking about the wisdom of Mahatma Gandhi, who was part of the nonviolent movement throughout the world, the inspiration for it. When Gandhi was asked to share the secret of his life in just 3 words, he laughed and he quoted from the Hindu scriptures, the Upanishads, saying these 3 words: renounce and enjoy. Kind of reminds me of the wartime poster, keep calm and carry on. And the idea that Gandhi was referring to is a reminder to us that for us to be present for the flow of life, we might have to hold things lightly. You know what happens when we hold onto things too tightly? It can get complicated. Anybody? Well, let me try to say it in a different way. It's possible for us to become prisoners, I think, when we attach to something in a clinging or unhealthy way. Yeah, there you go. When we try to control something, and sometimes it ends up controlling us. That's the prison. And maybe you've already felt that kind of imprisonment. If you've ever been attached to, I don't know, say like a person, a situation, possession and outcome. I mean attached in an unhealthy, unhelpful way. Because, when you're imprisoned by that kind of attachment, then you can't do what Gandhi said. You can't enjoy. You can't be effective because you can't fully be you. That's the easy part to understand. The challenging part, I think, to understand is how not to become attached. How exactly are we supposed to renounce our attachments, surrender our attachments? How do we detach without becoming uncaring? How can we disconnect from the issues of our world today? Without becoming a superficial, it's all good type of person, shallow, bland, in our approach to such things as life, raising children, love, the environment, the quality of our water, social justice, violence in schools, politics, war, hunger. How do we just detach from that? Well, Gandhi suggested that the answer is in where our focus lands. See, rather than focusing on and becoming unhelpfully attached to a specific outcome, to focus instead on what is mine to do. And then to check my motive through the filter of pure intention. And then to do the very best I'm capable of doing with whatever is before me. In his own words, he said, by detachment, I mean you must not worry whether the desired result follows from your action or not. So long as your motive is pure and your means correct, really, it means that things will come right in the end if you take care of the means and leave the rest to God. Well, okay. There's an important clue in there, though. So long as your motive is pure. To get honest with myself. What is it that I'm going after? To check my motive through the filter of my pure intention. In other words, what is in my heart to create through this thing I'm all mixed up in? So I've been reading about Gandhi and I've been noticing some similarities in his teachings to our own founder, Ernest Holmes' teaching. Both of them had this friendly, open study of other teachings. Both believed in incorporating what they learned into our actual daily lives, so bringing it from book learning into our actual lives. And both of them studied everything they could lay their hands on, in the spirit of being inquisitive and an explorer and welcoming new ideas. And they had no fear of higher learning. They had no fear of different ways of thinking. They had no fear of ambiguity and contradiction. And both of them believed that studying in this way wouldn't diminish their faith, but enhance it. And both saw that all teachings have some truth in it. And that the truth appears in many different forms to different people. And both of them were significantly, I would say radically impacted by their exposure to the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Both of them. Now, with this open attitude to life and learning, Gandhi led a whole nation into freedom, and he became one of the most prominent spiritual and social influences in a century what was known as the most violent century in recent time. And Gandhi's life demonstrated something that we attempt to teach here in our classes at the center through Science of Mind, and it's this. You and I can become change agents for this world. And once we decide to make a change, then we must become it. How? Well, number one, get honest with myself. 2, check my motive through the filter of pure intent. 3, do the best I'm capable of doing any moment with whatever it is I'm getting busy with. Be authentically engaged. And then finally, hold the outcome lightly. For Gandhi, one of his life-defining moments came while he was in South Africa, where he was an attorney at law. And one day, his company gave him a job in another city, and he had to take the train to that job. Now, at the time, South Africa was a country strongly divided along race lines. And people of European descent traveled in first-class carriages. Everybody else was expected to travel in the lesser class carriages. Gandhi's company issued him a first-class ticket, which he used. And he traveled along most of the way on the train until he reached the high mountain town of Maritzburg in the evening, and a white passenger got on the train at the station. And upon entering the compartment and seeing this traveler with a dark complexion, the traveler contacted the officials to complain. The official came into the train and said to Gandhi, "You'll have to leave." Gandhi said, "I have a ticket." The official said, "It doesn't matter. Get off or we'll call the police." Gandhi said, "You may call the police, and I have the right to stay where I am, and I refuse to get out voluntarily." He was put out of the train forcibly, left to spend the night in the cold, high climate, and there, sitting in the deserted station in the bitter cold, something was born in him. He called that moment in the cold night in Maritzburg the most creative incident in my life. Out of it emerged his nonviolent approach to social change that became the inspiration to literally millions of people across many nations. Mahatma Gandhi famously said, "I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary. The evil it does is permanent." Oh. Well, let's look at that word, nonviolence. It comes from a Sanskrit word, ahimsa. Ahimsa is made up of two words, ah and hims. Hims means the desire to kill. And ah is the negative prefix that indicates the absence of. So it means lacking the desire to kill. The absence of the desire to kill. He said further about it, "I don't believe in short, violent cuts to success, however much I may sympathize with and admire worthy motives. I am an uncompromising opponent of violent methods, even to serve the noblest causes." And he went on to say that experience had convinced him that permanent good can never be the outcome of untruth and violence. You know, peace does not come through violence. Harmony does not come through shaming others. Agreement does not come from rigid thinking, black and white thinking. Inclusion does not come from separation thinking, and so it goes. It reminds me of the work of that New Thought teacher, Emma Curtis Hopkins, who said it like this: "If the truth makes free when it is told, and we are not free, then the truth has not been told." Well, that night on the train in Maritzburg, a nonviolent civil disobedient movement in South Africa was born. And instead of fanning the flames of hatred with more hatred, or violence with more violence, Gandhi instead encouraged a style of resistance that demands the highest courage and mindfulness and commitment, a nonviolent resistance or a non-reactive resistance. It's called non-resistance. It's a complex idea to explain. Maybe I can explain it through the story of a cat that belonged to an acquaintance. Once upon a time, my friend's cat became overweight, dangerously so. And they took the cat to the vet, and the vet said, "Look, you have to walk the cat." And because they lived in an apartment, they had to put a holster and a whole thing on the cat. The thing is, as soon as they put the leash on the cat, it just went limp. You can see that in your mind, right? Now, the cat didn't fight. He didn't hiss. He didn't attack. But it was very clear he was not in agreement. His non-resistance was not violent. And it wasn't compliant. No. Another solution had to be negotiated. There it is. Now, the result of Gandhi's non-reactive resistance in 1914 in South Africa is that the laws changed. The laws that were most offensive to Indian nationals, they were repealed, and civil rights started to become a part of South Africa's law, although there was still a lot of discrimination against indigenous people. Still, a small seed of freedom and justice had been planted, and it would grow eventually into radical changes decades later. It started there. Here is Gandhi's formula for civil disobedience. Disobedience, to be civil, must be sincere, respectful, restrained, never defiant, must be based upon some well-understood principle, must not be capricious, and above all, must have no ill will or hatred behind it. Okay. All right, let's get the formula right. Get honest with myself. Seek out my motive, look at it through the filter of pure intention, and then focus on what is mine to do, and then do the best I can with whatever it is I'm busy with without any hatred in my heart. There it is. Nonviolence and non-resistance, they're connected, They're not passive attitudes to life. They require courage and thoughtfulness and mindfulness and clarity, all the things, and I see that how much energy I waste, emotional, physical, mental, when I'm resisting something violently in my mind, especially when I'm getting bothered. Do you need examples? That's like when, I know this is wrong and I don't want this to go this way, and why can't other people see how plainly wrong it is? Or why did she speak to me that way, and what did it mean, and why can't she see how it's wrong to do that? Or, what does everybody want from me, or why is the... You get the idea? So I've had to practice, this week. First step, notice the effects of resistance. The shoulders tense up, and the mind gets dark, and the thinking fast and hot, and the blood temperature rises. You know what I mean? And then the second step is to pause, to breathe, and to relax my shoulders. And then the third step is to begin to talk to myself. I care about who I am in this moment. I care about how I'm showing up in this moment. It's important to me. I care about how much love I'm bringing into this world and the way I'm bringing it in. I care about being as transparent as I know how to be and have as little hidden as possible. And in this way, I begin to detach from the resistance energy, and then I can reconnect with what's in my heart and then decide how to act from that. In the language of the Bhagavad Gita, it's Gandhi's beloved handbook, his manual for how to live life. Detachment in there is described as skillfulness in action. And it suggests that a detached person focuses on doing her best in whatever she's engaged in. Similar to how Don Miguel Ruiz in the Four Agreements advises us to be impeccable with our word, to not take anything personally, to not make any assumptions, and then to do the best we are capable of doing in any given moment. That's helpful for me, very helpful, because right now, there are many things that I'm engaged in right now that are worrying me. I'm worried about the outcome. I'm worried that I'll make the wrong decision. I'm worried that I made the wrong decision. I'm worried that it won't work out like I planned. Do you know that place? Yeah? The thing is that worry thinking is a kind of resistance. Who knew? The author of Winnie the Pooh, what's his name? Yeah, Alan Alexander, I believe his AA is for. Anyway, he gave us these words, these wonderful words. Have you ever stopped to think and then forgot to start again? Now, I mention it because too many times for me it was just the opposite. I stop to think, and then I think and think and think, and then I think some more about what I'm thinking about. And very soon the thinking turns into worry, and then before I know it, I'm in a prison of resistance. Oh, so we got to work out the formula. Okay. First, notice the effects of the resistance thinking. Shoulders up, mind dark, thinking fast. Second, pause. Breathe and drop the shoulders. And third, talk to myself. I care about who I am in the world and how I'm showing up through this. That's important to me. Fourth, then do the very best I know how with whatever is before me. And now I can add to it fifth, while keeping my mind focused on spirit, the Lord of love within, the divine mind, or if you prefer, your highest value. You know, when I first read about the idea of non-resistance, I resisted it. You know, because my mind was screaming at me, saying, well, what do you mean? I mean, don't you know how people everywhere are being oppressed? And I had to remind myself that the great role models of non-resistance, they weren't passive. They moved mountains. Jesus, when the mad crowd gathered to stone a woman to death, he stood up. He challenged them. He spoke to them. And he was able to diffuse an angry mob mentality. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose legacy encompasses influential decisions in our nation, monumental actions, and major progress in human rights. Mahatma Gandhi, he liberated an entire nation from colonialism. Now, I mentioned the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, because it was so powerfully influential in Gandhi's life and also in the life of our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes. I want to tell you a little bit about it. It takes place on the eve of a battle at a battlefield where two great armies are gathered, facing off to begin a war. On one side, imagine there is the army, and on the other side, the other army, and in the middle, a field. And the prince of one of the houses asks his chariot driver to take him down the middle of the field, in between both armies, to see what is going on. And as he is driven down there, he is devastated because he sees on this side family, friends, and cousins, and he sees on that side families, friends, and cousins. He sees on that side noble people, good, decent people, and he sees on that side noble people, good, decent people. Now we can see immediately that the metaphor of the story relates to us and how our nation right now is divided down the middle, with friends and neighbors and loved ones on one side and friends and neighbors and loved ones on the other side, and some of them in the middle. Who among you have relatives who are going to vote differently to you? And who among you have friends who believe in different solutions to the ones that are important to you? And who among you belong to a group or a community like ours, or a family where you have to hold your opinion close to your heart because it doesn't fit in? That's what the prince was facing as he stood there in the battlefield, and it caused him to be filled with despair. And he said, there's no point to this. There's no winning this. No matter what the outcome, there's no winning it. And it filled him with such grief that he fell back in his seat and he made a decision to do nothing. Turns out the chariot driver was the embodiment of God. And they have a conversation, and in the conversation, God instructs the prince, saying, to take no action is an action. And itself is an action that carries devastating consequences. Better for the prince, God says, is to fix his mind firmly on God, and then to do what is his to do without anger, violence, or hatred in his heart. So you see, the metaphor is about the inner battle in us. It's about the inner despair when we can't see the light because of the density of the darkness. It's not an invitation to war. Don't let anybody tell you that. It's an invitation to step into life with dignity and courage. Keep my mind as best I can on the Lord of love within. Get honest with myself. What am I trying to birth in the world? And check my motives. Squeaky clean. Check them according to the filter of pure intention. And then do what is mine to do. Now, for our meditation, I thought I would read a passage from the end of chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita as a tribute to the inspiration that it gave to Gandhi and that he gave to the world. So I invite you to breathe in. And as you exhale, let your eyes close as these words float through your awareness. They live in wisdom who see themselves in all and all in them. They live in wisdom whose love for the Lord of love has removed every selfish desire and sense craving that torments so many hearts. They live in wisdom who are not agitated by grief, nor hankering after pleasure. They live in wisdom who are free from clinging and fear and anger, unchained, no more attached to selfish sense urges. They live in wisdom who are not elated by good fortune, nor depressed by bad fortune. Such are holy people. When you keep persistently thinking about sense objects, that's when attachment grows. And attachment breeds desire. And desire urges possession. And when possession is thwarted, anger burns in the heart. And anger clouds the judgment and robs a person of the power to learn from past mistakes. But when you move through the world of the senses and you are free of attachment and aversion, there comes a peace in which all sorrow ends, and which you live in wisdom of the self within. They are forever free who have broken out of the ego cage of I and mine, so that they may be reunited with the Lord of love within. And this union is the supreme state. To bring our meditation to a close, I invite you to take the next breath in deeply, followed by a sigh.